These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Imagine a station where you access information. Think of a station that creates awareness for national development. Imagine a station that prepares you for a bright and greater future. A station for all ages. Documentaries, classroom and television, events coverage, children's programs and variety shows. Always stay tuned to NTA Knowledge on the Star Times platform. Channel 359. For partnership, sponsorship and advert placements, contact us on NTA Knowledge. NTA Knowledge, learning to broaden horizons.
Slavery is an evil practice abolished all over the world over 200 years ago. But today, human traffickers are selling human beings as slaves in Africa. It is your responsibility to make sure that you and the people you know do not fall into slavery. Don't believe fake promises of jobs abroad.
President Buhari inaugurates Ariaria Market Power Plant in Aba.
House of Reps passes National Minimum Wage Amendment Bill. Adopts 30,000 naira as new minimum wage.
We have considered the report and effectively pass this into law, subject to what the Senate will do. If the Senate accepts our position, then we are done and dusted.
More than 20 chairmen of different political parties in Imo State defect to APC as the party holds presidential campaign in Owerri.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall examine the suspension of Chief Justice Walter Onnoghen.
In the last few days, the suspension of Chief Justice Walter Onnoghen as the Chief Justice of Nigeria has dominated public discourse.
Yes, Kirian, there have been reactions to the development from both within and outside the country, including statements by the United Kingdom, the United States, and the European Union.
However, the federal government cautioned against such negative statements by representatives of foreign countries and organizations which seem to interfere in Nigeria's internal affairs.
Now, the Nigerian government described the statements by foreign missions as being seemingly tolerant of corrupt acts and also downplaying the anti-corruption drive of the Buhari administration. especially against the background of the facts of the Onogan case.
All right, and the presidency insists that it is within the confines of the law as provided in the grand norm of the country. Well, Kingsley, you know, it seems the National Judicial Council has taken bold steps to quickly deal with the issue as it held an emergency meeting just yesterday.
You're right, Kirian. Now, the NJC at the end of the meeting gave Justice Walter Ononge and Justice Tanko Muhammad 7 days to respond to the petitions against them. So, one question to ask immediately is, why the hue and cry over the suspension of Chief Justice Walter Ononge as the head of the nation's judiciary? And of course, the comments have come from various groups, including political parties and foreign missions. And what, indeed, are the right and moral steps for the caliber of the personality alleged to have committed the infraction of the law to opt to do in such circumstance? And more particularly, what has the suspension of the Chief Justice got to do with the conduct of the general elections beginning on the 16th of next month? These are some of the issues, of course, we intend to take a look at on Good Morning Nigeria today as we discuss the suspension of Chief Justice Walter Ononge. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to this edition of the program.
And I am Kirian Umayo. You're welcome to the midweek edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And as always, the complimentary segments of the program shall be brought to you, including newspaper review, business, sports, and foreign news. For now, Comfort Amodu is ready with the morning news. Hello, Comfort.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. And here's the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari says, with the common good of all, as it is cardinal objective, the governing APC has proven that party differences and constitutional limitations are never barriers to the execution of people-centered policies and programs. Inaugurating an independent power plant for agrarian market in the commercial city of Abuja State as part of energizing economies initiatives, the president said electricity in particular has no political color.
I am told that before this intervention, traders in this market only got power for 4 hours a day and paid exorbitantly for it, which consequently affected the viability of many businesses. That is, the side lethargy was inherited, by which we are replacing with all-day power supply that is cleaner and better for environment. Those who turn their backs on these problems still have the courage to campaign about unemployment and poverty. Nothing, they say, can change what we have done here to provide relief where they perpetrated neglect.
The president also visited the chairman of the State Council of Chiefs, the Enyi of Aba, where he was endorsed for re-election. Now, the federal government says it will continue to safeguard the nation's resources for the benefit of all. President Buhari was speaking at the APC presidential campaign rally in Umuahia, the Abia State capital.
Our popularity will be tested on 16th of February. Are we ready? What we need in leadership are men or women, statesmen, who are broad-minded, who accept Nigeria as their own constituency, as President Muhammadu Buhari has done.
I assure you of what I believe, that if we get the infrastructure correct, the roads, the rail, power, Nigerians will mind their own businesses. I expect you this time around to vote APC.
About 22 chairmen of different political parties, including the leader of All Progressives Grand Alliance, ABGA, and New PDP in Imo State have defected to the All Progressives Congress. This form highlights of the APC presidential rally in Imo State. While in Owerri, the Imo State capital, President Muhammadu Buhari appealed to the people to be peaceful in their conduct before, during, and after the polls. He assured them that his administration remains committed to taking Nigeria to the next level of development, as demonstrated within the last 3.5 years.
that the government will continue to support you, and the market money that is being conducted by the Vice President again is having a positive effect. We will continue to secure the country, manage it properly, and fight corruption.
The National Security Advisor General Babagana Mungono says the Buhari administration will demonstrate zero tolerance to political thuggery and illegal bearing of firearms under any guise before, during and after the general elections. This was at a meeting with the Nigerian Governors Forum in Abuja.
You are more aware than I am that no individual or group is greater or more important than Nigeria. Accordingly, no individual or group's ambition is worth the loss of life of any Nigerian or our national cohesion.
The presidency says with active collaboration among countries and development partners, the Lake Chad Basin could be transformed from its present state. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo at the second Regional Protection Dialogue on the Lake Chad Basin says humanitarian and protection challenges in the region require urgent action.
We commit today to a speedy implementation of all the objectives of this second dialogue and, of course, the first. The challenges in this region are an opportunity to change the narratives of misery in the Lake Chad Basin. Let us seize the moment.
The House of Representatives has passed the National Minimum Wage Amendment Bill and adopted 30,000 naira as the new minimum wage for workers in Nigeria. This was based on the recommendation of the ad hoc committee set up to collect information from stakeholders on the National Minimum Wage Bill, which was pegged at 27,000 naira Tuesday. Plenary also passed for second reading the 2019 appropriation bill of more than 8.8 trillion naira and referred it to House Committee on Appropriation for further legislative action. The House has, in the meantime, adjourned plenary to Tuesday, 19th February 2019. And that's the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
My name is Mrs. Felicia Odunola Olojede. I'm living at Ibadan. I'm selling shoes at Oje in Ibadan here. I've been in this business from years ago. There is no government, no anybody that helped me to assist me in my market. But now I collected 100,000 from BOI program. I like the program. Now my business has been increased without any collateral, without any surety. I've returned the money back. I advise the federal government to continue with the program.
But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol Protect.
The Candidates, a presidential town hall co-production between Daria Media and NTA, supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Kingsley Mogalu and running mate Umar Getso of the Young Progressive Party, Muhammadu Buhari and running mate Yemi Osinbajo of the All Progressives Congress, Omoyele Sowore and running mate Rabiu Ahmed Rufai of the African Action Congress, Atiku Abubakar and running mate Peter Obi of the People's Democratic Party. Moderator, Hadria Ahmed. Town Hall venue, Sheraton Hotel, Abuja. Next Town Hall, Wednesday, 30th January 2019, with the candidates of the People's Democratic Party, from 8 to 10 p.m. The candidates will be broadcast live on NTA and other partner TV and radio stations, as well as streamed online on NTA and DTV.media. If you are over 18 and want to be part of the audience, apply online at daria.media. Or use the hashtag NGTheCandidates, or participate online using the hashtag NGTheCandidates.
Here you go.
Madam.
That's it. Those nairas are enough.
Hi, dear. Helen, you got so much even after spending so little.
Savings is such a necessity.
You save everywhere, but here, you lose it all.
How?
With this?
Impossible.
New Tika Apic 10X. Even after applying up to 1 liter of your solution multiple times, you won't get the same cleaning that Apic gives you in a single round.
And the expense?
Far less compared to your 1 liter of solution. New Tika Apic. Toughen cleaning,
toughen savings.
Manager people, make we make the right choice, yo. Make we go for a man of integrity. Hey, so make we gather together and make this change. What my people of Nigeria, together we go carry Nigeria to the next level. Nigeria don't decide. Vote Baba Buhari. Baba Buhari, the man of integrity. Hey, vote Baba Buhari. Man, we no corrupt, we no go chop our money. Hey. Agriculture, the next level. Fight corruption, the next level. Good roads, to the next level. Electricity, to the next level. Railway, the next level. Empower, the next level. Get money. For good health we go. Baba Buhari. My people, for the next level. APC, next level. Naija people, make we all come out to vote Baba Buhari.
This message is from Buhari Next Level Group.
And in case you just joined us, this is Good Morning Nigeria, the network service of the NTA. We'll now take you to business. Nigeria moves 4 places up in the latest global corruption ranking by Transparency International. Let's now join Kunle Adeye for details of this and other business stories.
Nigeria now occupies the 144th position on the latest Global Corruption Perception Index released by Transparency International. The 2018 report placed Nigeria at 148th position. The United States of America dropped 4 notches out of the top 20 countries in the world in the latest ranking. An economist, Yushau Aliyu, attributes the improvements to the no-nonsense posture of President Muhammadu Buhari, which has brought some measures of sanity into corporate governance.
It's still good for nations to have their ranking improving, because if it is improving, it means that a lot of government business is now being controlled somehow. But what is important about the ranking is just to show the behavior of modern democracy and the success they are making, and also the convenience and stability of modern democracies. If President Buhari has 4 notches now on his own side, it means that he has performed better than before. So it's a good kudos to him, and it's a kudos for the black nation, especially in Nigeria.
In another development, Africa's oil-producing countries are proposing the expansion of a financing agency called Africa Energy Investment Corporation to fund collaborative efforts towards providing oil and gas infrastructure on the continent. At the Nigeria International Petroleum Summit, Minister of State for Petroleum, Dr. Ibe Kachuku, said the idea is to mobilize between $1 and $2 billion of resources to fund all essentials necessary to collaborate. The minister, who is also the president of African Petroleum Producers Organization, disclosed that the organization has signed resolutions that endorse the challenges stakeholders suggested and is moving towards implementation.
All the essentials that are necessary for us to do proper collaboration. Today, most African countries are siloed. Everybody does their own thing. You do your own refinery, you do your own plants, you do your own gas turbines, you do your... Everything is so siloed. But if we could just cross the Rubicon and be able to extend hands of infrastructural relationships across Africa, build joint pipelines, like Dr. Barry said, build joint plants, build joint refineries, begin to protect the African market, we would have taken a huge step.
And next is graphic representation of Tuesday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you very much, Kunle Adeyeye, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next for us, we'll take a look at the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Now, join me in welcoming our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toyabe. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kensi. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, good to see you. The 4 or 5 papers that we have this morning all have as their lead story the developments on the suspension of Chief Justice Onoge and, of course, the meeting that took place yesterday of the NJC, the National Judicial Council. Leadership has it this way with a double-decker headline. NJC gives Onoge and Muhammad 7 days to respond to petitions, with 2 riders refers CCT chair to Judicial Service Commission. CCT stands for the Code of Conduct Tribunal. And ex-appeal court president Abdullahi to serve as interim chair, that is chair of the NJC. For the Nigerian pilots, again, that has an exclamation as the headline, drama, it writes, 4 riders, as NJC upholds petitions against Onoge and acting CJN Muhammad. I don't think, Bayo, that's the NJC has not pronounced on the petition, so it's not upholding the petitions just yet. But NJC gives them, that's the targets of the petition, 7 days to respond to separate petitions, and refers petition against CCT Chair Omar to Judicial Service Commission. Onoge drags federal government before appeal court over suspension.
All right, and let's turn to Daily Trust newspaper, which also captures the story on Onoge. It says, Onoge Mohammed gets 7 days to respond to petitions. With the rider, NJC also queries CCT chair and reconvenes February 11. And on to the New Telegraph, which also has that as a main headline, the New Telegraph newspaper. Supreme Court justices in trouble with 5 riders. NJC gives Onoge and acting CJN 7 days to respond to petitions. Council refers petition against CCT chair to FJSC. And then suspended CJN seeks relief at appeal court. Lawyers shun MBA directives. Oshomele to US, UK, and EU. Nigeria, not a colony. Bye.
Yes, thank you. The emergency sitting of the National Judicial Council dominates the papers. And when they sat yesterday, Justices Walter Onoge and Ibrahim Mohammed both recused themselves from the meeting. And the council appointed Justice Umar Abdullahi, former president of the Court of Appeal, to preside as interim chairman. They have been given 7 days to respond to petitions. Actually, there was 1 petition against Justice Walter Onoge, and there were 2 petitions against Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed. The spokesperson for the NJC, Soji Oye, says the council gave them 7 days to respond to the petition because of the critical elements involved in the petition. Normally, they ought to have been given 14 days. So apparently, they've been given the opportunity for accelerated hearing for the petitions. Meanwhile, Justice Walter Onoge has filed an appeal at the Court of Appeal seeking to nullify the ex parte order that formed the basis for which he was suspended. The suspended CJN posited 4 grounds for the appeal. The first was that the CCT order signed by 2 of the 3 members was issued without jurisdiction. The second relief he was seeking is that the CCT erred in law in issuing the order, making an order unlawful and a violation of his own right. The third grounds for which he sought the Court of Appeal to hear his appeal is that the order remained null and void as it was prematurely imposing a punishment on him when his plea on the 6-count charge had not been heard. The fourth ground was that the court order by the CCT chairman and the other members acted without jurisdiction. He thereby sought the Court of Appeal to set aside the order, asking him to step aside as the Chief Justice of Nigeria. At the court in Abuja yesterday, some lawyers went about their normal duties, attending to court proceedings. It may be recalled that the Nigeria Bar Association had advised a boycott of the court for 2 days. Some lawyers said since the issue was already before court, it was sub judice, and they didn't feel obliged to obey the order of the Nigeria Bar Association.
And actually, that disobedience cut across the country. But in some states, actually, some lawyers abided by the call by NBA. So one wouldn't know, because NBA, as the umbrella body, of the person of Nigeria, many Nigerians didn't understand why, their call was not obeyed across board.
Well, like every issue, we always say has 2 sides. Some probably see the point of view opposite to what the Bar Association said, but the critical issue was that he said some of them had clienteles for which they had commitments at court, and they had dates to meet their cases at court. And secondly, already there were cases pending on that same issue, and it was sub judice for them to act otherwise, apparently stay in action until the issues are resolved.
All right, let's return to the papers, this time to the foot of the front page of the Nigerian Pilot, where you have a number of headlines there. Just below the 2 photographs of the campaign trails or trains of campaign trail of the 2 leading political parties. It is often said. On the right there is President Muhammadu Buhari, on the left, Atiku Abubakar. Below that is a headline. Reps reject 27,000 naira, approve 30,000 naira minimum wage. That story is on page 39. And below that, Speaker Dogara formally announces his defection to PDP. Afenifere endorses Buhari Oshibajo ticket, backs true federalism. Details on page 5. Buhari in Abia promises more infrastructural development in Southeast. And UN seeks $848 million to tackle humanitarian crisis in Northeast. 17 bandits and 2 informers captured alive by troops. That's on page 41. And just below the nameplate of the Nigerian Pilot, Kirian, very quickly, below the nameplate of Nigerian Pilot, Atiku will deal fairly with geopolitical zones in area of appointment. This is according to Jonathan, former president, page 8. And Nigeria needs $3 trillion to build world-class infrastructure. This is according to the federal government. Details of that on page 13.
All right, now let's return to the New Telegraph newspaper. And below the nameplate, there are some headlines there. First is, police promote CP to DIG, send him on terminal leave. Page 34 has details. Reps approve 30,000 minimum wage for workers. Is on page 2. Atiku writes, US, UK, EU accuses Buhari of constitutional infractions. Is on page 2. Then woman gives birth on campaign ground, gets governors 2 million naira. It's on page 8. I think that happened in Delta State. Now, to the foot of the New Telegraph, we have on the elections polls, said federal government pulled security operatives on alert. With a rider, governors express worries over arms build-up. That's on page 5. But you have to come in here.
Yes, the governors expressed concern about house build-up, and they were briefed by the National Security Advisor, and the brief of the National Security Advisor indicate that politicians who fear that they may lose elections are plotting to disrupt the election. And he indicated that there are indications that some of them are acquiring arms with the intention of arming bandits, thugs, and terrorists. And the National Security Advisor Mongono warned that government will have zero tolerance for political thuggery and illegal bearing of arms. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Governors Forum, Abdulaziz Yari, has assured that he and his colleagues will cooperate with security agencies. The Inspector General of Police was also at the meeting, and during the meeting he gave assurances that the police force will ensure that the election period are violence-free, and also said police will be neutral in all instances. The House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee recommended 30,000 naira minimum wage, and the House passed that yesterday. In effect, the House of Representatives amended Section 301 of the bill, and it's now to read that as from the commencement of the bill, every employer shall pay a wage not less than a national minimum wage of 30,000 naira per month to every worker under their establishment. Any employer who fails to comply is liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding 75,000 naira. Before that amendment, the fine used to be 5,000 naira. A second section of that amendment, it says an additional penalty not exceeding 10,000 naira each day for which that offense is committed will be imposed. The Deputy Speaker who presided over the House session said the House chose to support the workers and their demand. The bill is awaiting concurrence from the Senate. And the human interest story that you read, it was on the campaign trail that a pregnant woman went to Isokolo in Delta State. And as the pang of labor hit her, people came around, helped her, and they moved her to an emergency van where she is safely delivered. Governor Okowa, whose campaign train arrived with the trail at that place.
That's right. You know, I had to correct myself earlier. Because
Train and the trail.
Yeah, train
yes.
and trail.
And
Trail is the event.
Yes,
the train is the movement, the people.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And he now said that for having the courage to come to the campaign trail in that condition.
Knowing that her time is close.
2 million naira. And don't be surprised if the baby is given a name Rally.
And we hope also that doesn't become an incentive for those who are close to their due dates to be looking for the next rally. I'm sure they will be targeting President Buhari wherever he's going to be, or Atiku or any other politician. They say, look, I'm very close. Well, congratulations to her, regardless. Let's return to the leadership newspaper below the name flag. Budget funding, that's the kicker. Federal government targets 200 billion naira from sale of 25 assets. And also there on the front page, you have the story on the arms build-up election. That's the kicker for it. Governors panic over proliferation of arms, with the rider politicians working to disrupt elections. That's according to the National Security Advisor. Right at the foot of the front page of the leadership newspaper, above that strip advert, you have a number of headlines, some we read earlier from other papers, including, of course, the approval by the Police Commission of the appointment of 8 DIGs, one of whom is proceeding on terminal leave. Carry on, I'm done.
Yes. Yeah, okay, right. And we're almost done, but let's go to Daily Trust now and take some stories or headlines on the foot of the newspaper. Troops kill 21 bandits in Zamfara on Kaduna. It's on page 4. And then Kwankwaso's dad endorses Ganduje for second term. It's on page 6. Federal government saves 206 billion naira in staff salaries in 2 years. That's by IPPIS. It's on page 17. Before we finally bring in Bio, let's take the editorial so you can now go through all of that. Now, it says safety and sacrifices of our front-line troops in the northeast of Nigeria. By the way, it's taken from the Nigerian pilot. The sacrifices that our troops on the front line in the northeast, the theater of insurgency war, we have made and continue to make are by far beyond quantification. Bayo.
Yes, I think I agree with the editorial that our troops at the war front are paying tremendous sacrifices. They go through unphantom pains. They also are missing the company and physical and emotional company of their families. And they go through physical stress, and some pay even the supreme sacrifice in the process of defending the territorial integrity of our nation. However, insurgents have always become a challenge. These days, with soft attack at markets, mosques, motor parks, and even sometimes at churches, it has become a difficult challenge for the troops. And the editorial is saying that we need to give these troops maximum support. Only last week, troops of 159 Battalion had to ward off another attack at Gaydam. And in fact, they've been commended by the theater operator of Operation Lafia Dole for their gallantry in warding off that attack. And this came because the multinational task force, which was working along with troops for Nigeria, Cameroon, particularly those from Chad, had withdrawn, leaving a safe passage for some of the insurgents to come. And another dimension is the introduction of the Islamic State in West Africa dimension, which has also brought in foreign terrorists that have come to join the Boko Haram insurgents. And so the editorial is saying that care has to be taken to look at the level of intelligence. It is speculating that perhaps there are double agents who are giving information ahead to the terrorists and therefore making the attack, frequent attack, especially of recent, to even including military bases, were very frequent. And we also have to caution our colleagues, particularly in the media. Yes, it is good to report, but when you report situations to the details of revealing the plans of our troops and their movement, you are endangering the lives of our troops. And therefore, they need our support and encouragement as they fight to defend our nation and fatherland. And
some scientists, have said that it will be necessary, to deploy satellite in terms of assisting the intelligence gathering, because with good satellite positioning, you can actually track the troops, whatever the Boko Haram movement, across the Sambisa forest and elsewhere. Because that is practically what the developed nations are using, to track down the terrorists. It's from the air. You'll be picked up.
I think our Nigerian Air Force is doing something in that light. And what they do is they do air surveillance, and they are able to target the movement of the terrorists. And of recent, there have been reports, which have been even in public domain, of targeting movement of the terrorists, and they have been succeeded in neutralizing them. And that, the collaboration they require, therefore, is from information from the grounds, particularly within the cities, because most often than not, the terrorists sometimes even give notification that they will be coming. And especially in the last instance, they specifically went on the market day because they were targeting foodstuffs, because apparently their foodstuffs have been replenished. Replenish.
Bayo, thanks a lot. Of course, Kyrian's obsession with satellites means that he's the next astronaut from Nigeria whenever a satellite is being launched. Okay, Bayo TV, thanks a lot for being with us today. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be another day.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be going ahead with our principal item for discussion this morning, which is on the suspension of Chief Justice Walter Onoge.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NT.
Team huddle.
But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol Protect.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir. And your shirts are always so white. I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results.
Shh, it's our little secret. It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
Sore throats, it's often caused by bacteria and viruses. Feels like they're having a party. You need Strepsils. It soothes the pain, plus it fights the germs with 2 germ-killing actives. Double power in 1 lozenge. Bye-bye sore throats. Take Strepsils.
We thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, to kickstart our discussion on the subject, now let's take this background report put together by Femi Okeo.
On Monday, the 14th of January 2019, a charge was filed against the then-sitting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onnoghen. It was a 6-count charge brought by the Code of Conduct Bureau alleging the contravention of provisions of the Code of Conduct Bureau and Tribunals Act. Count 1 reads that the defendant between the 8th of June 2005 to 14th of December 2016, being a public officer serving as a judicial officer in the Federal Republic of Nigeria as a justice of the Supreme Court, failed to declare and submit a written declaration of all assets and liabilities within the prescribed period of 3 months after being sworn in as a justice of the Supreme Court. Count 2, that the defendant falsely declared assets by omitting to declare a domiciliary US dollar account. Count 3, that the defendant falsely declared assets by omitting to declare a domiciliary euro account. Count 4, that the defendant falsely declared assets by omitting to declare a domiciliary pound sterling account. Count 5, that the defendant falsely declared assets by omitting to declare an e-saver savings naira account maintained with the Standard Chartered Bank Limited, Wuse 2, Abuja, which has been operated since 2011. Count 6, that the defendants falsely declared his assets in his Form CCB and a naira account maintained with the Standard Chartered Bank, Wuse 2, Abuja, and thereby contravening the provisions of Section 15, subsection 2 of the Code of Conduct Bureau and Tribunal Act. Although this charge was filed before the Code of Conduct Tribunal, the arraignment never really took place due to some preliminary legal matters. But so much have since happened, leading to the swearing in of an acting Chief Justice of Nigeria by the President. President Muhammadu Buhari himself gives reasons for these steps.
The Chief Justice of Nigeria and his legal team have made nonsense of the efforts of the Code of Conduct Tribunal to hear the allegation on merit and conclude the trial as quickly as possible.
Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be examining what best needs to be done to move the nation forward in the light of these recent happenings.
Femi Okewo, thank you very much for that background report. Now we have 4 guests with us in the studios this morning to discuss the issue in further detail. First, we'd like to welcome at this time distinguished Senator Ahmed Lawan. He is the majority leader of the Senate. Senator Lawan, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
Also with us in the studios, we have Alhaji Lai Mohammed, is the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture. Alhaji Lai Mohammed, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Good morning, and good morning, Nigerians.
And also with us is General Ibn Haruna, former Federal Commissioner of Information. Well, IBM, you're welcome.
Good morning.
I understand you're also a legal practitioner.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to welcome you. And I also have to introduce to you Mohammed Bello Shehu, who is a public affairs analyst. You're welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Kinsley?
All right, well, let's begin the conversation this way. I mean, from the background report, we got some facts of what has transpired, but it's also the case that the suspension of the Chief Justice and the swearing of an acting Chief Justice, 2 events have generated quite a storm of reactions, both within and outside the country. Let's begin with the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture. What is your disposition to the reactions so far?
Thank you very much. I think there's been a deliberate attempt to muddy the waters and inflame passions and overheat the polity. What are the issues? The issues, as Femi Okewo has brought to us, is that on January 13, allegations were made or charges were filed against the then sitting Chief Justice that he had failed to declare properly his assets, or that he has omitted to declare certain assets. And the issue to me are 3. Number 1, which provision of the law has he violated? He has violated the provisions of the Code of Conduct for Public Officers. 2, is a judge a public officer or not? The answer is yes. 3, is a judge compelled also to declare his asset? And the answer is yes. Now, what has happened? And to me, these are the basic facts. 2, it is not true, as is being bandied, that the President has removed the Chief Justice of the Federation. No, he has simply suspended the Chief Justice based on an order of court which is the CCT. It's also important to please disabuse our minds. People have argued that Mr. President or whoever has no right to suspend the former Chief Justice of the because it is the NJC, that's the National Judicial Commission, that can do so. Again, it is false because the NJC is charged with the issues that relate to professional misconduct of judges. We are speaking today strictly of a public officer, be a minister, be a judge, who has violated the provisions of the Code of Conduct for public officers. And it's also very instructive that this same suspended Chief Justice has pronounced severally on the issue of what the law says if you violate the provision of the Code of Conduct for public officers. In the case that everybody knows, which is the Supreme Court 279/2012, which he delivered on the 12th of July 2013, in a case between, Ahmed and Ahmed, CPC and INEC, he clearly said that the Code of Conduct Tribunal has exclusive jurisdiction to try all matters pertaining to violations of the provision of the Code of Conduct for public officers. He went further to say that the Code of Conduct Tribunal is empowered to impose any punishment in line with the relevant provisions of the Code of Conduct, for public officers. So all this attempt to politicize a very straightforward legal matter, I think is uncalled for. And the attempt to link the trial or the suspension to the general elections is actually uncalled for. I think I want to rest my argument here.
All right, thank you, Honorable Minister. Actually, the reactions that Kingsley raised stems from the fact that they're also coming from legal practitioners having varied opinions on one issue. And I'd like Senate Leader Alawan to come in here. What is your own disposition?
Well, I'm constrained. Thank you very much for that question, but I'm constrained to go into the issues here because this is something that is before the courts, and as a legislator and the Senate, we are not supposed to discuss such matters. However, I think my contribution will be largely on the events that happen that relate to our being called back to convene the Senate to discuss the issues. But as for contributing to those issues, whether there was something wrong or not, I think I'm constrained to discuss that. However, let me say that I feel disappointed with some comments. When we link this entire event with elections 2019, I just feel that we are still far away from being efficient in our electoral process. In fact, 2 days ago, the acting CJN sworn in about 200 people as tribunals. This is already saying our elections would have problems and we are going to courts and tribunals. We need to move from this. We need to enhance our electoral process and deny the tribunals from even functioning, because we should be able as politicians, after having a very good, credible, peaceful elections full of integrity, we should just accept our results. So we should not, because the main problem here is some people, especially the opposition, feels that there is an advantage to be taken by appointing another person instead of the suspended chief CGN. And I think this is going overboard because we are supposed to have our elections in such a manner that the people and not judges or tribunals decide who wins and who loses. So I feel slightly disappointed that we are discussing this on the basis of the feeling of the opposition particularly, that the entire thing was done because maybe the suspended CGN could favor the opposition, and that's the impression they give anyway. And this acting judge, the CGN, would be much more liberal to government party. I think this is entirely wrong and it's unacceptable. We should move away from this so that when an action is taken, that action must be seen to be in the national interest, and I think I would restrict myself to this and wait for maybe a question that will be more pertinent to me with respect to why we were called back for convening the Senate to discuss the matter and what happened thereafter, because certain events happened after the pronouncement by the Senate President.
All right, distinguished Senator Ahmed Lawan, you will get the question presently, but let's bring in our General IBM Haruna. One-time federal commissioner, that's what they were called in those days, also Federal Minister of Information and Culture. He's also a lawyer, and it's been on Good Morning Nigeria in the past. There are a number of issues on the table pertaining to the suspension of Chief Justice Walter Onoge, legal, political, as well as social. What's your take?
Well, my take is to look at it from three perspectives, as you have rightly underlined. First is the moral perspective. Second is the political perspective. And thirdly, the legal perspective. I think on the moral perspective, the present administration has the change mantra. And one of the headings of the change mantra is to tackle the issue of corruption. And that being the case, pertaining to the restraining the Chief Justice and the appointment of an acting Chief Justice, from the moral perspective, since what has brought us to this event is to do with the fight against corruption, I think that the options, having gotten the intelligence and is credible, I believe that the legal steps come into play. Unfortunately, from the evidence I have gotten from various reportage, it appears that the legal steps that have been taken has been muddled. Firstly, there are provisions that gives the president his options without really going through the instrumentality of the Code of Conduct, on the basis that the Interpretation Act, Section 11, which gives the impression that the president who has the initial powers to appoint includes his powers to restrain. So based on that provision and the intelligence that had been gathered, I believe that the president could have acted in accordance with the procedures without really allowing the Code of Conduct to proceed. Because having gotten that intelligence, he could have proceeded in accordance with Justice Oguntade's statement in the case of somebody with First Bank, that the first step in proceeding with investigation is to suspend. And under the Interpretation Act, the president could have suspended the Chief Justice without waiting for the National Judicial Commission, that is using his invested powers as an appointee, an interested party in maintaining his electoral mandate, that is to fight corruption. Unfortunately, with regards to the Chief Justice, he could, on the basis of that, prepare his address to the Senate. And unfortunately, I think that there's a lacuna in our provision, because I think that the the Council of State should have been brought into this matrix. But there's a lacuna. So it means on his own, based on the intelligence report he has gathered, he could take his initiative. Now, the other aspect of this, the legal aspect of going through the Code of Conduct and the Code of Conduct Tribunal, there's a provision that says if you want to indict an omitted act by a public officer, and he replies and accepts, then the provision says there is no need to proceed to the tribunal. So in that case, by that provision, the president should have acted on his inherent powers using the Interpretation Act to proceed in the manner for removing or suspending the Chief Justice. Although there is no provision specifically in respect of suspending the Chief Justice, is derived from Interpretation Act that he who appoints also has the power to suspend as the first step to mounting an open or intensive investigation. Now, the political aspect, having seen the moral, the legal, the political aspect, unfortunately, this incident is happening at the verge of election. And the impression given is that the suspension of the Chief Justice, the Chief Justice, is to do with forestalling him from having any positive contribution to what might result from the elections. Well, I think personally that casts some aspersion on the judiciary and the judicial system.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. You know, you have raised pertinent issues here. One of which is the aspect of the president acting, based on inherent power, as we posited. But we have also listened to many legal practitioners across the country who shared different opinions on that aspect. We will return to you for further clarifications, but let's go to Bello now, who is a public affairs analyst. Now, I take it that you have listened to so many comments, since last Friday that the president acted on the orders of the CCT. What's your take?
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Like my elder brother, General, just said now, from my own understanding of the issues, Mr. President campaigned on 3 cardinal principles: anti-corruption, security, and Nigerian economy. And every Nigerian living knows one of his strongest qualities as a leader is someone who detests corruption, who wanted to clean the system. Now, looking at it more broadly, the change mantra that he espoused has three components, which is to restore, to rebuild, and the rebirth of the nation. And if you look at the trajectory of what the president has done since when he came to office, he is trying to change perspectives on how Nigerians look at issues and how we do business. He's trying to get Nigeria back to where Nigeria was. If this were like 30, 40 years ago, we wouldn't even have been talking about this, because morally speaking, the chief judge himself will have tendered his own resignation. And like the general has said, from section 11, subsection 1D of that Interpretation Act, a person who has the power to appoint, even though subject to the confirmation of the Senate, also has the power to suspend. There were many public officers and public servants under the present administration that have been suspended. We had the case of Babachir. We had the case of Professor Usman. Some of them, even their case is not so much as damaging as this one. We are talking about the chief judge of the Federation to forget or to lie. Basically, it's even lying under oath, because when you submit that form to that tribunal, it means that you swore an oath that you are telling the truth. This is perjury in itself. And I don't think any serious nation will allow such an officer to continue in office beyond a day. However, like everyone has said, elections is coming, and sentiments are being whipped all over the place. The opposition party is thinking that this act is done in order for Mr. President and his party to have an advantage. But I don't look at it like that, because the chief judge of the Federation, he is not the one conducting the election. It's INEC that is conducting elections. We have international observers, we have card readers, and they have assured Nigerians that they have made serious provision to provide free, fair, and credible election. And even the president himself has said on many numerous occasions that if there is one legacy that he wants to leave behind for Nigeria, is to have free, fair, and credible election. For the first time in the history of our democracy, that a sitting president will be asked a question, what happens when you lose? His response was, I have lost elections before, I have gone to court. So this is someone that wants to rebuild our institution. And Nigerians, of course, will say many, many things, because, I mean, some are even calling on US and UK and other countries to get involved. Whereas you and I know in the United States, not even $20 a judge, even a ticket to go to like Yankee games or any of those things, if a judge is in violation of that without even being told, he will have to resign or he will be forced to resign. So all these countries that are making this noise and saying, oh, it's too close to election, no, you don't. He is the last hope of the common man. That's the chief judge of the Federation. If someone can have, having all his years of experiences and service to Nigeria, an account that is over $3 million US, and you said you forgot over 50 properties undeclared, 18 months you did not touch a kobo, a penny, how are you surviving? Are you an international investor? I mean, do you have invested your money over the years, all the proceeds of your salary in various businesses that you have returns and you are able to take care of yourself? And I think the president is bold enough to take this decision, and we hope that at the end of it, the judiciary will also be clean, because if the judiciary is corrupt, the whole nation will be in trouble. A nation can survive corruption by politicians, but no nation can survive corruption by judges. So this is the crux of the matter.
All right, Mohammed Bello Shehu, thank you very much. Both yourself and General IBM Haruna, you've raised, among other issues, another contentious point that is also in the public domain, and that has to do with the proper application of the relevant provision of the Interpretation Act. That's to say, he who has the power to appoint also has the power to remove. I'm sure you have listened to you have heard the argument by some proponents that a person who can be so removed will be one who holds his or her appointment at the pleasure of the appointer. But that's another issue that, of course, we could focus on if we have enough time. But I want to bring in again the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture. I see you were itching to respond to some of the points that have been raised.
Thank you very much. I think, once again, we are losing focus and we are muddying waters. Why do I say this? The laws of the country are very clear on this issue. Mr. President did not suo motu suspend the Chief Justice of Nigeria. He acted on an order served on him by the Code of Conduct Tribunal. And this must be understood, because I was at the briefing. The President said a few hours ago, I was served with an order by the Code of Conduct Tribunal directing me to suspend the Chief Justice of Nigeria pending the resolutions of allegations against him before me. So please, it is not Mr. President who suspended him. Mr. President was acting on the order of a court of competent jurisdiction, and that order, to the best of my knowledge, is yet to be appealed and was not appealed at the time when Mr. President acted. Two, I have listened to the argument about, the Interpretation Act. But just let's imagine, supposing, just for the case of argument, that the president had actually invoked that power, it would have even left more broad than we have today. But what I want us to not to lose focus of is, one, and I keep saying this, number one, those who are talking about the removal of the Chief Justice, it was never removed. It was suspended by Mr. President acting on order of the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Three, I insist again that the proper court to try anybody for violation of Code of Conduct for Public Officers is the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Also, that a judge of the Federation is a public officer, and that is why he submitted himself to the jurisdiction, to even declare his assets. Now, there's this argument also that we must, we must also not lose focus of, which is that this same judge has himself pronounced that the proper court to hear any allegation like this is the Code of Conduct Tribunal, and also that court has powers to impose punishment. Now, General IBM raised the issue of if a person is confronted with omissions, and those omissions, and he admits them and he puts them there, and that's the end of the matter. Well, I think when you are asked to declare your assets, they are asking you to, not just because they want your record, they actually want to examine and see exactly how you do come about. Can you explain these, assets? And I must emphasize again that all that the Code of Conduct Tribunal has done is to say, please ask the Chief Justice to step aside. Otherwise, we will not be able to continue objectively and judiciously with the investigations of the allegations against us, against him. So those who are saying Mr. President is wrong, number one, for calling them Mr. President did not sue Moto suspend the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Mr. President actually was served an order by a court of competent jurisdiction that he should suspend him. And Mr. President was right in so doing. Now, all this argument and extrapolation about, election, I think they are neither here nor there. Let's face the facts. One, did the suspended Chief Justice, did he violate or not provisions of the Code of Conduct for Public Officers? Two, is he or not a public officer? Three, doesn't the Code of Conduct tribunal have the jurisdiction to try him? Fourthly, has Mr. President acted on his own or on a court order? And if we get these facts, I think all these arguments, all these extra arguments would become irrelevant. And I think, unfortunately, we like to politicize everything. And please, again, the same Chief Justice, with due respect, suspended Chief Justice, as chairman of the NJC, has also suspended several judges even when their cases are in court. So I don't see what is, what all the uproar is about.
All right. That's very interesting points that the minister has raised, and I'm sure that he's also familiar with the debate surrounding some of those key points that he has articulated.
The process of stepping aside is what matters here. Now, one could ask this question: what are the competencies of the CCT? What are the limitations of the tribunal's competencies? Because the argument on the other side has been that the president has no power, even when they know that he was acting on an order. That is confusing me a little bit. I hope we'll have time to delve into that much more in this conversation. But let's return to Senate Leader Lawan, who is cleverly, not wanting to get into this matter as we wanted him to. But the Senate President reacted when this happened, and they called for emergency sitting, which was, aborted, so to speak. Right. So what happened, and what was your reaction as a Senate leader?
And the fact that the Senate has gone to court itself.
Well, let me say that I wasn't trying to be clever when I said I don't want to be involved, because as a senator, I am not supposed to be discussing these issues, the technical situation of whether it was wrong or not, because it's a matter that is in court already. And by our standing orders, 53.5, is sub judice. We should allow the judiciary to deal with that matter. Having said that, let me say that the Senate President recalled the Senate to plenary for Tuesday, yesterday. That was done on Saturday. And he said the purpose was to discuss the suspension of the CGN. But halfway, by late Monday, that invitation back to plenary was aborted. And we learned that the Senate had gone to the Supreme Court for interpretation of the suspension. It was at that point that we felt that the Senate President was not acting on behalf of the Senate. And therefore, we had the need as an APC caucus, part of the Senate, and in fact, the majority of the Senate, to meet and take a decision to say that the Senate President had no such powers to go to the Supreme Court for interpretation without the resolution of the Senate. In fact, that will be taking senators for granted. And the Senate President made so many statements before on this matter. It will be interesting to read what he said, because I want to comment on it. He said, by unilaterally suspending the CGN without following the provision of the Constitution, President Buhari has sent a dangerous signal to the entire world that Nigeria is no longer a democratic nation and that we have returned to the old jaded era of military dictatorship. He went on to say, again, at this point, all democratic institutions in the country, the international community, and Democrats across the world should rise against this blatant act of impunity. We should jointly condemn this retrogressive, uncivilized, and despotic measures. Certainly, that was not the Senate President speaking. That was the DG of the presidential campaign of PDP. That was the national leader of PDP talking. And he had all the rights as DG, as national leader of PDP, to say those things. But he had no such rights, no such privileges as Senate President to speak on our behalf in this way. And that would tantamount to taking everybody in the Senate for granted. I had had arguments later that the leadership of the Senate met and decided to go to the Supreme Court. Well, for the records, I was never part of that meeting. But even if all of us, 10 principal officers of the Senate, met, we should have reconvened the plenary, discuss it, and take a resolution that we should go to the Supreme Court for interpretation. I think for us in the Senate, this is a serious matter, and it's going to go beyond this matter of the suspension, because we are not allowing anybody to usurp our functions. As principal officers, we are simply first among equal. And everyone who came to the Senate was elected simply as a senator representing a senatorial district. The senators who are not principal officers, in fact, decide our fate. And therefore, we should always take recourse to ensuring that we get our colleagues involved in taking such fundamental decisions, because this is a fundamental decision. And for me, I believe that the Senate President has been misadvised to be the DG for a campaign, a presidential campaign, because this is someone who is the chairman of the National Assembly, the third arm or the first arm of the federal government, because the legislature is first, even in the Constitution. And he has a very sensitive role to play in every matter that is legislative and even executive. And therefore, shouldn't have gotten involved, because now I get confused with the signals I receive from my Senate President. When he takes decisions, I wonder whether it is the Senate President or the DG or the national leader of the PDP. That was not like this before. And this is a crucial matter that we should have handled with sensitivity and all the seriousness that it deserves. That is to say, that when he called for the reconvening of the Senate, first, he shouldn't have made those statements I read as Senate President, because he would have challenged those statements. He could have said, this is an issue that requires our attention. When we go in, then he could express his opinion when others also express, because he is supposed to coordinate our debates. We would have come up with a resolution to go to the Supreme Court, and that would have been perfect and unfaulted. But when the Senate President had already taken a decision and went to court without our resolution of the Senate, the purpose of calling us back possibly was to go there, endorse, and ratify a position already taken. Remember, the APC is in the majority in the Senate. We are 57, PDP is 46, ADC is 3, Abuja is 2, SDP is 1, PRP is 1. You cannot just assume as a minority, even though you are in leadership, that you would just neglect the views of other senators in that place. So I believe that there was no need for those statements he made unless he made them as DG or national leader of PDP. But certainly as Senate President, he should have been more careful. When you asked me the first question, I said I'm constrained. And truly I'm constrained to discuss these things because our standing orders with 3.5 does not allow us to get involved because we don't want to influence what happens in the judiciary. So I think that we as a legislature should add value into these kind of issues through taking the proper legislative steps that are enshrined in the Constitution and in our standing orders.
All right, Senator Lawan, thank you very much. Now, let's return again to General IBM Haruna. General Haruna, you listen to Elijah Lai Mohammed. He says, look, pause the pin of Section 11 of the Interpretation Act. That's to say the inherent powers of a president to appoint and then to suspend or to remove, depending on the appropriate circumstances. And he says, focus on the fact that the president was being respectful of a valid order coming from a tribunal. What is your take, again, on some of the reactions that we have heard with regard to the propriety of the ex parte order issued by the Code of Conduct Tribunal?
Well, based on what is in the public domain, the jurisdiction of that court on this issue was something pending in that court and in the Court of Appeal. But what is in the public domain that is very disturbing and questions the legitimacy of the order and the obeyance of it by the president in the understanding that there are other court orders which he has not obeyed, and raises the question of selectivity in the obeying of others. However, the important thing that underlines public criticism on the order is that the order itself was secured, according to what is said, before a motion was made on the ex parte, and before a notice had been served on the defendant. So the conclusion of it is that what has been publicized before the public with respect to that order is that it was incompetent. And being so, however, and having it not put aside, the president chose to obey it. But I had said earlier that on the basis of the omissions made for, and the petition that gave rise to it, the Code of Conduct Bureau ought to have concluded its preliminary investigations for a charge to be made for the tribunal. But in the public domain, the speed or the time lag between that petition and the trial or presumed attempt to try and the securing of the order which has been obeyed, that there seems to be some speed or inordinate desire to proceed with the trial. However, one also thinks that if the president was seized of all the informations of the omission and it amounted to some gross offense being expected, as I said earlier, his other options was to proceed without necessarily having a court order. But going by the way of the court order that is faulted and is believed to be incompetent, it has put a model into the whole scheme.
All right, sir. Thank you indeed. It has spoken more, actually, but considering what the Honourable Minister said earlier on, with the fact that the same Onogan, made a judgment on similar matters and made exclusive jurisdiction to deal on violations of contravening the provisions of good conduct on the CCT. We may get back to that. But for now, let me get to Bello once more, because all this is culminating into a legal conundrum of such. Now, what beats my imagination, and possibly imagination of many Nigerians, is the fact that Nigeria is blessed with legal luminaries, men and women of high intellect in legal matters, senior advocates of Nigeria, reputable ones for that matter. Yet, when it comes to constitutional interpretation, there are usually varied opinions that brings up this kind of situation, will drag on and on and on and on. Where is that knowledge? For you as a non-lawyer, what is the reason for such? Because it keeps reoccurring.
Well, I think by nature or tradition, Nigerians, especially the elites, are sophisticated noisemakers. Any issue that you have in the national domain, you will have people, whether they are lawyers or non-lawyers, everybody seems to have an opinion. We have seen when the former governor of CBN was suspended back in Jonathan's administration, remember over the allegations that some $20 billion or so was not accounted for by the NNPC, and he was suspended and another person was brought in even after he filed a case in court trying to stop that suspension and action of then president. But the president used his powers to appoint somebody as a substantive governor of Central Bank. And we have seen in the case of Justice Salami, somewhat similar, but not exactly the same, because Justice Salami it's not a question of code of conduct or undeclaration of assets. We've seen, even at that time, lawyers, SANs, everybody came out and it became an issue for discussion. That's just the way Nigerians are. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that type of discussion and noise-making and interpretation, articles and this is good for democracy. However, what is not good is for some people to conclude that the president has any other motive other than the public good. Now, we as Nigerians should be able to separate those kind of sentiments from when a presidential decision is taken by the president. The president has a lot of information that you and I and the public are not privy to. Someone was telling me, and I believed him, he's a member of the administration, that if the president were to act on the judiciary issue when he came into office, what they discovered, remember the BVN issue, the Treasury single accounts, all these things has added so much pressure on Nigerian public servants and Nigerians in general that for now, we have no hiding place. Nobody has any means of, I mean, you can only take money and put it in your backyard or in your sink or whatever. But so long as you will take these funds into like a bank or something, the BVN will catch you. There are many abandoned accounts. And you and I know, even the lawyers that are making this argument know, that within the last 16 years or so, or 19 years of our democracy, one of the sector that had a field day whenever elections are around are the SANs, the courts of laws. But it seems from 2015, that's no longer the case. So they are really, really very much angry that this man has come and the situation has changed and it's no longer business as usual. I have to add a point here. There was a gubernatorial candidate that contested election in one of the states. He told me personally, and I believed him, when he lost his election, he has all the grounds to go to court. And he did file a case in the court. A judge of the Supreme Court, who happens to be a friend to his older brother, he went, to plead with him that I have a good case. After all discussions were done, that Supreme Court judge, he is late now, I won't mention his name, asked him that he has to bring 2 billion naira cash to him. And this is known. Everybody knows this. You look around Nigeria, judges have hotels, they have properties all across the place. Yeah, we can always say yes. I mean, they have not been tried and this. The only way you can get them is through the code of conduct. Declare your assets. Like I said before, in the United States and UK, as a public servant, if I were on salary 100,000 per annum, if I were on that salary 100,000 per annum, and they see me flying from US to Nigeria 5 times a year, taking first class, buying a brand new car, paying cash, doing transaction, I will be under serious scrutiny that at some point, the FBI and the law enforcement will come and say, Mr. Shehu, you are under arrest, you have the right to remain silent, and that I have to explain my source of income. Unless if I'm selling drugs on the side or doing some things, credit card frauds or something illegal. We want Nigeria to become like the United States in terms of law and order and people really, respecting their oath of office and doing what is right for this country. That's the only thing that can save Nigeria from becoming a failed state.
All right, Mohammed Bello Shehu, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. There are matters also arising from the issues you have articulated, but we also have reactions that have come in from our viewers. We will take those reactions after we return from this short break.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem. You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yeah, take that one.
You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back here. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's proceed now with the tweets that have come in. Kirian, quite a lot of them.
Okay, yes.
Festus Akimboewa is the first.
All right, the first one from Festus Akimboewa. He says, the compromised judiciary is the biggest threat to our democracy and the country. The CJN, who is the face of the judiciary, admitted to have made grievous mistakes and should have resigned or stepped aside honorably to save the judiciary and the country. The CJN, Onogen saga, has exposed the dangerous defects in our law and the way expensive lawyers mobilize themselves to ignore the substance is worrisome. We must be more interested in being a country of law and not of men.
This is coming from Abdullahi Onishabe. He says, no one is above the law. And since the CJN has confessed that he made a mistake by not declaring his assets, he should be shown the way out.
All right, from Ibrahim Modu Aji, the suspended CJN failed to justify the huge moral burden on him by resigning pending the determination of the suit against him. Neither do the NJC queried and decided his fate. Blamed the judiciary, not federal government, on what largely described as due process was not followed.
And Idris Gidadewaleyu tweets, to me, that is the right step to take, as he cannot be the judge in his own case. That's to say the suspended Chief Justice. Now, we should all wait for the case to be decided by the courts rather than preempt the outcome.
And from Dele Jack Solomon, the decision to suspend the Chief Justice has led to many Nigerians, including lawyers and civil society observer groups, to question whether due process was followed or not. My take is this: public servants must eschew corruption, follow due process, and respect the law of the land.
Now, Raji Afiz Abidemi tweets, now on the issue of Justice Walter Onogen, I love the stand of the NJC for querying both justices. Let's wait for the 7 days given to them and see what's going to be the outcome. And I believe this is what they call due process.
All right, from Cecilia Okoroma, she says public office holders must learn to honorably quit when fingered in any wrong doing, just like former Minister Kemi Adeosun did.
Abdullahi Musa tweets, Nigeria is the only country where corruption is celebrated. #1 chief law officer admitted committing an offense. Actually, it's not chief law. Chief law officer is the Attorney General of the Federation. Admitted to committing an offense, but here we are debating on the legality or otherwise of his suspension. The embattled CJN should have honorably resigned his position, knowing full well that he erred. If he had done that, there wouldn't have been all the uproar. Let him explain how he came about all those accounts traced to him. Is he a businessman?
All right, Solomon Dembo says lawyers have argued that by admitting that he forgot to declare some of his assets, the CJN ought to have been given a form to update his assets as provided in the CCB Act and not suspended. Why is that not considered?
Husseini Baba May tweets, now Justice Onogen's suspension was valid, legal, and constitutional. We need to save our judiciary from putrefaction.
All right, Okoroma once again says, unfortunately, CJN Onogen has allowed political jobbers to use his hard-earned name to play dirty politics to score cheap points.
Terence tweets, now the issue on ground is the need for more clarification. The Senate running to the Supreme Court would further clarify the issue, since the Senate only sought for interpretation of what has transpired on the basis of whether to remove or suspend the CJN.
Okay, this one from Ibrahim, we've read that before. Let's go to Mohammed Kabir Misao. He says, our view is that he should go indefinitely.
All right, those are the tweets that we can accommodate in the meantime. Let's return to our guests. Honorable Minister of Information and Culture. Now, again, in the public domain, since all of this broke in the past 5 days or so, there has also been a claim that what is happening is public lynching of the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria. Claims that, look, the facts out there in the public domain say that the Chief Justice admitted to doing this, he admitted to doing that, but that those matters had not been properly tabled before a competent court, that's to say the tribunal, that, oh, he has X number of houses, he has so much, where is his bank statement indicating those accounts, where are the documents related to his houses, and so on and so forth. But that all of this is to put him out there, and everyone is feasting on him. Is this media trial or public lynching?
Honestly, I disagree with that view. See, and now before I address that, I'll go back to General I.B. Amarunu. The issue of jurisdiction is a settled matter. Who can try issues pertaining to the violations of provisions of the Code of Conduct for Public Officers is settled. And by who? By no less a person than the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria. 2, the issue of whether an order was competent or not competent, I think it's not for us to discuss. Mr. President was served an order of court, and I believe it was right in obeying it. This argument about updating, say, okay, the Chief Justice admitted that he actually forgot to include $900,000, this and that, and that what he ought to have done is update. No problem with that. Look, we all listened to the 6 charges against him. Now, anybody who listened to Mr. President's address on Friday, he said, while all this was going on, another several millions of dollars was traced to the account and it was not declared. It was not, and even the provision of that law does not say that the moment I come and say, I forgot and update, that is the end of the matter. And of course, I keep saying, the matter has not been decided by the Code of Conduct Tribunal. The Code of Conduct Tribunal simply gave an order saying that he must be suspended, otherwise they will not be able to deal with this issue given the position of the Chief Justice of Nigeria in the judicial system. And Lord Dennis said that a judge must be of a character that is completely beyond reproach. A judge must conduct himself in a manner that at least he does not become a lawbreaker himself. And I seem to agree with Malam Shehu that this kind of double standard is very unfair. In the in the UK, a judge was dismissed based on the fact that he was convicted of smuggling whiskey. Was dismissed. Now, those who are accusing the government of procedure, I want to say once again, the issue of procedure was followed completely. The proper court is the Code of Conduct Tribunal, and he is empowered to do what he has done. And the matter is not by any means finished at all. It's not concluded. After all, even the PDP that said that he suspended his campaign in sympathy with the suspended Chief Justice, have they not resumed their campaign? Which means suspension is not that they have determined outside the matter. But if you follow this matter, it is impossible to continue with this matter in the Code of Conduct Tribunal without the decision taken by the CCT. You cannot have a man presiding over his own cause. You cannot.
Is this public lynching? Just return to that question. So, public lynching.
Yes,
that some persons have expressed
the issue of
view,
public lynching. Believe me, if anybody has lynched anybody, I think it is those who have raised this cacophony of voices. Those are people that have been responsible for the lynching. What did the president do, for crying out loud? He said, I've been served with an order of the Code of Conduct Tribunal to suspend the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and I am obeying that order. Now, are you saying that the Code of Conduct Tribunal has no competence to give that order? I mean, this is the kernel of the argument. And I keep referring back to Justice Onoge himself, who as far back as 2013 put this matter beyond argument. One, he said, in the case SC 279/2012, Ahmed versus Ahmed, CPC, Kano, INEC, that if there's any case of violation of any provision of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, of Code of Conduct for public officers, the proper forum is the Code of Conduct Tribunal. And two, that tribunal is empowered to impose any punishment within the provisions of the law. And that is exactly what the CCT has done. So what is different?
All right, Kirian, just before you pop your next question, I think because the minister has referred to this more than one or two occasions in his response, the way the courts operate in Nigeria, we don't have a jury system. Yeah, the lower courts, that's to say the Federal High Court or the State High Court, it's a single judge that sits. Now, at the Court of Appeal, you have 3 justices. And then at the Supreme Court, you either have a panel of 5 justices or 7, depending on if it's a constitutional matter or otherwise. And usually, of course, every judge will have his own opinion. If you have, it could be by majority or it could be unanimous. So you could have a split decision in some cases. I know you have a next question.
Yes. Just before that, yes. Whether it is 5 or 7, the judgment of the Supreme Court remains the final statement on any issue. That's why I said the matter of jurisdiction is beyond any...
It's settled.
It's settled because it has been pronounced by the Supreme Court. Incidentally, presided over by Justice Onoge. That's what I'm making.
And in this matter, can a court give a judgment against itself? That's a good question that ordinary Nigerians would like to ask.
There's something that happened in the 90s. In the 90s, the Supreme Court justices had actually, they sued Concord newspapers for libel. They sued Concord newspapers for the defunct Concord newspapers because they said that the Mercedes-Benz cars were raining then, which General Ibrahim Babangida gave to them, were intended as a bribe, to the Supreme Court justices. And then they went to court, to say, listen, we had our integrity and name to protect. But, of course, I'm going to open up another aspect now, which I don't think one is getting to. Yes. All
right, thank you. Now, as you round off, Senator Lawan, your position and possibly that of a majority of senators is that the Senate President erred by going to Supreme Court without a procedure or due consultations of the senators. Now, which way forward on that matter?
Let me correct an impression. It's not due consultation. There was no resolution by the Senate. Okay. If you talk to people, to senators individually, call them, it doesn't solve the problem. So there was no resolution by the Senate because the Senate was on recess. And the right thing should have been that the Senate reconvenes, take a resolution, and then gives us the leadership, the power to go to Supreme Court on behalf of the Senate.
We have no time
which way forward? I will advise that the Senate President should go and withdraw that case because we need to have a resolution. Now there is no resolution. The next thing, if he doesn't, we will also consider as a caucus, as an APC caucus, the next legal action we need to take because we are not discussing the need or necessity of going to Supreme Court. We are discussing the procedure in this case, the process, that there was a breach, that there was an usurpation of the powers of the Senate by the Senate President, and that he has no such powers and therefore should withdraw the case, come back. If he wishes, invite us back. We talk about this, whether we should go to the Supreme Court for interpretation or not. But to do otherwise will compel us as a caucus to also approach the Supreme Court to say that we are never a party to this and therefore this case should be thrown out.
That will be more money for the learned senior advocates who will be handling that matter. Okay, but very quickly, let me respectfully skip General Ibrahim, General IBM Haruna. I know that he probably would like to respond, and go to Mohammed Bello Shehu because of the points that he raised with regard to what the attitude used to be during the election season. With what you said, will it therefore be part of a public demand to say, fine, this matter has happened, could we also have a public view of the assets declaration by other justices, Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, Federal High Court, State High Court, and various tribunals?
Bring it on. I'm absolutely for it. And I would love a situation and a day when every person that is appointed to be a judge or a magistrate has to abide by the law by declaring his assets as at when due, and also as he moves on to other, like from magistrate 1, 2, like this. This is actually what the law is. I think General can bail me out here.
I'm saying publicly.
Yes.
Let's say publicly now. Let's expose it to the public so that if one has one house or one hut.
Yes, I can. Let me give you an example. I know for a fact in the U.S.
We're getting pressed for time now.
Okay, in the U.S., you can go and search and see how much a judge is worth, where his properties and houses, and if he has every year his tax record, his house records.
Unfortunately, we don't have that access here yet.
Yeah,
so that could call for legislative intervention.
Every public servant, not only judges, but more importantly, judges.
That's right. That's right, Bello Shehu. General IBM Haruna, very quickly respond from another matter that had also been in the public domain. I would like you to respond to this, yes or no. It's been said that the chairman of the CCT himself is facing allegations by the EFCC and that he remains in office. So why do you ask the Chief Justice to step down?
It is not an answer for me to give. My own is to raise questions. The only question I have that I'm not clear in my mind is that there is a proviso in the Code of Conduct Act that says if the subject admits his omission, then there is no need or necessity to go to the tribunal.
Okay.
Now, that's a question I'm not sure now.
We are pressed for time.
What meaning can be given to that proviso?
We are pressed for time, and I want to take you on one of the things you've said earlier on, that there is a lacuna somewhere, in our system, generally speaking, especially the constitution of this country. There is, based on what is playing out. And at this point, gentlemen, we'd like to appreciate all of you for being part of our program this morning. First is, of course, Ahmed Lawan, the Senate leader. We thank you immensely for coming and for
thank you very much.
Giving us, educating us actually on what some certain laws say in your domain. Thank you indeed for coming. And of course, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, an Honorable Minister of Information and Culture. It's been nice listening to you this morning on this very important issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And General IBM Haruna, former Federal Commissioner of Information and the illegal practitioner, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your wealth of experience on this program.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed. And public affairs analyst here who spoke on behalf of the unlearned Nigerians, so to speak, that's Mohammed Bello Shehu. We thank you for your view this morning. Thank you indeed.
All right, so it's on that note, of course, we draw the curtains on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for tuning in. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do have a lovely day ahead of you. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian Umayo, thanking you for joining us today. Have a good day.
NTA, Nigerian Television Authority.